What's up, guys, and welcome to a special edition of Player Pool. We got the Thanksgiving slate in this edition, and it is a slate where there's a lot of certainty and a lot of uncertain situations. And I'm going to break down the player pool and some ways that we might be able to get different right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. We got a special Thanksgiving edition here, and I'm going to break down the DraftKings main slate for Thanksgiving in this episode. And I also have recorded game scripts for all the games, so make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep track of when those shows are going to get posted. You're going to want to subscribe and hit the alert button. That also helps me out because I'm looking to get to 1,300 subscribers, hopefully by the end of Thanksgiving. I need about 90 left to get there. So if you guys could hit subscribe, that'd be great. And this is going to be an interesting slate because we got 3 games with a lot of uncertainty tied to some of these potential outcomes. But it seems from, judging from the way that people are going with the ownership projections, that there seems to be a lot of certainty on the slate with the direction of some of these players. We got a lot of high ownership on players that have been, spotty at best. So it should be an interesting situation with us building our lineups, and we can get a little bit different with a lot of our building in this slate, which is what I like, especially on a 3-game slate. We can focus on games where other people aren't focused on. And I think each of these games has the potential to be the highest scoring game on the slate, even though we got huge differences in the totals. We're looking at a 48.5 point total between Chicago and Detroit. We got a 37.5 point total between New York and Dallas. And we got a 47.5 point total between Miami and Green Bay, which is interesting because the New York-Dallas game is what stands out to me this week. We got a sloppy shootout situation developing in that one. We got 2 pretty bad defenses facing off against each other with backup quarterbacks on each team. But these are also 2 teams with nothing to lose, and I would not be surprised to see them in a division rivalry just kind of like going all out in this game. Could be like the Super Bowl basically for each of these teams. Are playing on Thanksgiving, last attention that anyone's going to give them probably this season, and they're not going to want to look stupid on Thanksgiving. So, don't be surprised if we see this Dallas-New York game go a little bit over that total, and potentially with the Green Bay game, I think that one can go under the total because Tua has struggled against teams in the cold. We saw it last season with the game against the Chiefs. They played in the playoffs in Kansas City, and Tua in cold weather was an absolute disaster. We've seen it time and time again with Tua when he gets put in these situations where, like it's not a controlled environment or the conditions are not like optimal or they're not, like something that he's used to or accustomed to. He kind of, just crumbles and does not deliver. And, I learned the hard way from trying to fight that trend in the past, and it has not worked out in my favor. So I think this time I'm just going to stick with, like what I've kind of learned from trying to start him in these situations. I think that's a game that could go under the total. Jordan Love has not been playing that well this season. It is a good matchup for Love with Miami. Their defense has not been great this year. They've been primarily a run funnel defense because teams have been taking a big lead with Tua out for just several weeks with his concussion. So I think that skewed the numbers more towards the run against Miami. But they've become more of a middling matchup. But quarterbacks have not done well against Miami either. They're only getting 12.7 DraftKings points a game. Like I said, it's been more of a run funnel defense. But the last few weeks, Miami has been back with Tua, and if you look at some of these games against their opponents, they won 34-15. So the Patriots were only able to score 15. The Raiders only able to score 19. Give me 1 second here, guys. Still recovering from a cold here, so my throat is pretty dead right now. All right, so we're looking at the Rams. They scored 15 against them. So, we've had some with the Rams, especially, like, decent teams have not been able to put up a bunch of points against them. And Jordan Love has been struggling a little bit this season. Not the high-powered offense that we saw last year, but they are capable of putting up points. You saw them put up 38 against San Francisco last week, but San Francisco was banged up. That was kind of expected that they might be able to do something like that to San Francisco last week. Prior to that, they only put up 20 against Chicago, and they put up 14 against Detroit. Two tough defenses, pass defenses. They put up 30 against Jacksonville, though. So, it's kind of up and down with the Packers, but this is going to be a cold game. If Miami's not able to put up points against them, I wouldn't be surprised to see this one, devolve into a Josh Jacobs game where the total is going to go a little bit under. That's going to give us opportunities to, go with a game like the New York versus Dallas game and, hit that lower total game that's going to be played in like Dallas Stadium. And I don't think that's I don't think they're gonna have usually they don't have the roof retracted. So I don't know what the situation. A couple weeks ago, obviously we had that situation with the sun peeking through and just blinding all the players. So, I don't know what the situation is going to be there this week. But it's going to be a better weather situation regardless than the Miami Green Bay game. And we got Chicago, Detroit. That's obviously in a dome. So the problem with Detroit and Chicago, though, is I think a lot of people are gravitating towards Caleb Williams based on his past couple games, and he's played really well. He played really well against Minnesota. He played decent against Green Bay, but other than that, like, what is warranting Caleb Williams to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate? He had 29 points against Minnesota, which has been a pass funnel defense all year. Minnesota has a great run defense, so they've been forcing teams to pass against them. And Caleb Williams had a good week against them last week, but if you saw him in overtime, he completely crumbled. He's still, making a lot of rookie mistakes. I think people were, gravitating towards him this week because of his rushing upside that he's shown the past couple weeks. We saw him get 70 yards against Green Bay a couple weeks ago. He had 33 yards against Minnesota last week. So Caleb Williams is going to be drawing a lot of ownership in this one. And, he's going to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate. So just think about that for a second. Like that type of certainty on Caleb Williams, like I will easily, bet against that and go with one of these other quarterbacks. He is cheap at 5,300, which lends to his price tag as well. If we're looking for quarterbacks, in that same range who have, similar upside to Caleb Williams, I think Cooper Rush We've seen him get, 17 plus DraftKings points the last couple weeks. If you remember Cooper Rush, he had some big games in the past when he's come in for Dak Prescott. And I think this is a situation against the New York Giants defense. They got a close spread. I know the point total is low, but there's a lot of damage that can be done against this New York defense. There are some concerns on the Dallas side with Thibodeau is back for New York, and let's take a look at some of these injuries on the Dallas side. We're missing Zach Martin on the offensive line. We're missing Jake Ferguson. Cooper Rush himself is a little bit banged up. We're also missing, like some depth on the offensive line. So not a completely healthy team here with Dallas. But let's go and look here at New York. All right, so New York, look at the defense on New York. I'm seeing a lot of guys on IR. There's got a lot of depth issues, and it's just going to continue to impact them negatively when their defense is getting worn out, and they also are they're missing an offensive lineman. It looks like there's a question between Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. It looks like Tommy DeVito is projected, I think, by ETR. I saw ETR projecting Tommy DeVito to be out, which means Drew Lock would get the start. Drew Lock, we've seen him come in these situations in the past and deliver with Seattle. Like last year, he had a spot start and he ended up having a really good game. Really like emotional moment too, like for a guy that's been kind of left for dead. But like he hasn't really done too much with his opportunities when he's coming for New York yet. But if Drew Lock is able to do something against this Dallas defense that is giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, that's going to set up Lock to have a pretty decent game. And he's going to be playing with nothing to lose, basically. And we've seen it with Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors had a squeaky wheel moment last week where he was talking to the press and they were asking him why he didn't get the ball, and he was just like, I have no idea. Like they didn't start throwing to me until like we were down 20 points in the third quarter or whatever. And like it just seems like a squeaky wheel narrative. I think that Drew Lock is going to be much more competent, much more capable to get Neighbors the ball, even though we haven't seen like Lock show much since he got to New York with his opportunities. He got Wally pipped by DeVito. DeVito ended up, surpassing him in the depth chart. So, like if DeVito is out, like ETR is projecting, and we get Drew Lock in this game, Drew Lock is an option too at 4,500. So we got Drew Lock at 4,500. We got Cooper Rush at 4,800, and this is a game where I think you can go over the total, whereas maybe some of those other games go either under the total, or in the case of the Lions and Bears. Bears have a good defense. They could certainly hold the Lions to maybe a lower team total than expected. I do think that the Lions are still going to blow them out though, or potentially win by a significant margin. And I think Caleb Williams is going to be overrated, like as far as his ownership in this game. And I think Goff is going to struggle as well against Chicago. So there's not really a lot of good matchups in that game except for the running backs on the Detroit side. And I think that that's just going to lend itself naturally towards a lower scoring game. So if we're looking at two games that could go under, that are projected for 47 points, and the field seems to be gravitating towards them. And then we got the New York Dallas game, which is projected to be a low scoring game, which could go over that total with a sloppy shootout situation. I think that like we can get some advantage by targeting some of these New York Dallas guys that have these really good matchups. So, that's an approach that I want to take when I build my lineups this week. We can go over the player pool in general. Goff has a difficult matchup against Chicago. Um, Chicago is giving up 13.2 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. And Goff, in general, just has not had a bunch of huge weeks this week. He's been super efficient, so it hasn't led to too many big weeks. He had that big week against Jacksonville. I think that was more of a get-right spot for Goff because it came after he threw 5 interceptions, so they wanted to get his confidence back up, so they just did not take their foot off the gas in that game. And Goff ended up getting, 4 touchdowns in that game. So he went from 5 interceptions in week 10 to 4 touchdowns in week 11, ended up scoring 37 and a half DraftKings points. And, I think he's back to being calibrated. I think that they're not going to necessarily, try to stomp Chicago or maybe necessarily will be able to stomp Chicago, with that defense in a divisional game. So, I think that game total could easily go under, maybe by a touchdown. So maybe by like, if that was going to be, like a 41, 42 point game total in that game, and Dallas and the Giants, let's say they went over by a field goal. So that levels these two games out to be, 40 points each, right? And we can get the discount on these, some of these Dallas players, and we can go in the opposite direction of the field. The field seems to be leaning on Rico Dowdle, another one of these sketchy guys that, we can easily pivot off of. I think if we go with Cooper Rush in the passing game over the running game in this one, I think that we can definitely get some leverage on the field in that one. And if Drew Lock shows up too, like Lock to Neighbors will be in play for sure. We could go Rush to CD and running it back with Neighbors, one of those situations. But there's just so many opportunities to get different on this slate by targeting a game where the fantasy matchups are really good and the total seems a little bit low for a game that's going to have, like milder, like normal weather conditions, which will be affecting this Green Bay game. Tua, I mentioned, like he's not very good in the cold, but in general, he's got a bad matchup. Green Bay's only allowing 14.4 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, whereas Miami, like I said, is only allowing 12.7 to the quarterback position. So neither quarterback has a good matchup in this one on paper, at least from a fantasy perspective. But this game has a 47.5 point total. So you add the cold weather into that, and Tua struggles in cold weather. You maybe take a touchdown off of this score too. That takes it down to 40.5. So gives you an idea of like a way that you can kind of look at this slate and think about this slate, where the certainty seems to be on some of these other spots, whereas give you an idea of how much ownership on these guys. Caleb Williams, he's the highest owned, projected owned guy, 30%. Jared Goff just under 20. Then you got Love, Tua. The guys at the bottom of the pile are Cooper Rush and Drew Lock. And we're talking Cooper Rush under 13%. For a guy that's just had two games in a row where he scored over 17 DraftKings points, and he's $4,800. So, I just think it's a like a potential situation that we can exploit here. As far as these running backs, let's run through these running backs real quick. Achane is in a situation where let's see, Green Bay is giving up 21.7 DraftKings points a game. But I would imagine in a game like this, they might lean heavily on Achane, especially if, it's going to be a situation where Tua is uncomfortable and he needs to rely on his easy targets. So Achane, Tyreek has been banged up. We know about Tyreek's situation. He's got a wrist that they have considered surgery on, and it's shown up in his stat lines. 9.5 or 10 DraftKings points last week. He had that 119 point week versus Vegas, but other than that, he's been MIA. 6,900. He's getting cheap though, so you can't really ignore that. Waddle had a big week last week, but that was his first big week of the season. His only his second double-digit point week of the season. So how much can we rely on Waddle if Tua is going to potentially struggle against this Green Bay defense? So that's why I like Achane in this one. And let's take a look at the tight end situation. 13.4. That's a middling matchup. That's how many points Green Bay's given up to the tight end position. So that's going to put Jonnu in play as well. So if we got Jonnu and Achane in play, like Tyreek is cheap, but maybe we work him in if some of our other positions are coming in underpriced and we can get some value there. That I think that makes sense to put Tyreek in those situations. But I think from a pure matchup standpoint, like we can go away from him this week. As far as other running backs, Gibbs and Montgomery both have a good matchup this week. I think they have a better matchup than the passing game against Chicago. 23.2 DraftKings points a game is what Chicago's been allowing. If we look over at the defenses on this situation, see how many injuries we got on the Bears front. All right, so from their offensive line, Ryan Bates, Bill Murray, they got pretty thin at left guard there. Ryan Bates, also the starting center, is going to be out. So that offensive line on the Bears, just keep that in mind when we're looking here at this game potentially going under. Get some more depth issues. We got he's nothing really concerned about. If we look over on the defense, Elijah Hicks is going to be out this week. Douglas Coleman III on IR, Jalen Jones on IR, Jaquan Brisker on IR. Like just a couple big names there with Elijah Hicks and Jaquan Brisker being out. That's going to set up like a decent situation for the running backs. So if we take Elijah Hicks, just kind of look, if you're not familiar with defensive players, I'm not an expert on defense by any means, but you can go over here and we can take a look at Elijah Hicks. His run defense grade is 77.8. That's significant. So he's going to be out. That's going to set up a team that loves to run the ball anyways, to be in a better situation to run the ball. So that's Elijah Hicks. And the other guy that we had was Jaquan Brisker. So we can go to Jaquan Brisker, put him in the same, get an idea. His grade, his run defense is 66.7. So he's got a pretty decent, run defense score too. He's also got a good pass rush score. So both these guys are going to be out of this game. I think that's going to open the door more for Montgomery and Gibbs. And that's just going to set up a potential situation where Detroit just runs the ball throughout the whole game like they normally do. Maybe even more so in this one. David Montgomery. Evan Silva mentioned in his article, I don't, I didn't realize this myself, but Evan Silva mentioned that Detroit sometimes leans towards narratives, and David Montgomery is facing his old team in Chicago. So, that would set him up to be in a narrative situation where he's facing his old team. gets an opportunity to run against them on Thanksgiving. And if the team has a handy lead in this one, David Montgomery could play a big role in that, and they could just keep feeding him all night. When Dan Campbell was asked about David Montgomery's health situation, because Montgomery was hurt earlier in the week, he said that there's nothing to worry about basically with David Montgomery's injury this week. So, Montgomery in a good situation. It could be a week where, we could go double running back on Detroit's side. Gibbs, always a threat, always a good player. And maybe when we build our lineups, we can build in that direction to kind of go the opposite of, some of these other builds. Let me get an idea of ownership on these guys. So Rico Dowdle, looking at over, like he's way up now. He's up around 48%. Jacobs around 39. I don't mind the Jacobs ownership there. Gibbs is at around 39 too, and then you got Montgomery down at like 27. So I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot of people starting Gibbs and Montgomery in the same lineup. So that could be a way for us to leverage our game stack of New York and Dallas and play a little bit different with our running backs as well. So why don't we go ahead and start building this lineup? So I'm going to put Cooper Rush in there as the quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and put Neighbors in there because I think Neighbors is going to need to have a decent game in order for Cooper Rush to get pushed. And then for Cooper Rush to have a big game, we're going to need to have Lamb in there most likely. Let's get those running backs in there. Gibbs and Montgomery. So we got a couple questionables in there too, which is good to put the field off a little bit there. All right, so we're looking at this so far. Let's get a defense in here. I think the Packers D is a pretty good bet this week. I don't hate the Dolphins D either. If we think that this game is going to go under, I'm going to go with the Packers D. 4,600. So let's look at tight ends here. Jonnu and Laporta will be the highest owned guys, but let's get Schoonmaker in there to give another target for Cooper Rush. Let me make sure that this is a good matchup for him. Yeah, maybe not the best matchup. Let me see if there's any nuggets here from Rich Rebar on Schoonmaker. All right, so according to Rich Rebar, the Giants have allowed 8.4 yards per target, which is 24th in the league, to the tight end position. So that sets up, Schoonmaker not to have a horrible matchup, but maybe not the ideal guy for us to start. So we can take a look at that here in a second once we get some of these other guys in. Let's see. All right, so if I'm looking at my next wide receiver, I like guys who I like this week. I like Keenan Allen's matchup. He's going to be highly owned. Tim Patrick this week because we got what's his face out. We got the other Khalif Raymond is out this week, so that's gonna help out, Tim Patrick for opportunity. He's at 3,500. If we were looking for a cheap guy, to plug in, I think he makes a lot of sense. Odunze makes a lot of sense this week. The way that Detroit has been playing, Chicago has been, putting DJ Moore, passing him a lot, uh, with a new offensive coordinator behind the line of scrimmage. So DJ Moore's, A dot has shrunk a bit, and Odunze has gotten 10 targets a game, the last couple weeks, which kind of makes him interesting in this matchup, against Detroit, who is missing Carlton Davis this week. And if we look over at Detroit, let's go to their depth chart. Look at all these injuries to Detroit's defense. That's significant. That's pretty significant injuries to their defense. I still think that they can handle Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is just not that well adapted to the NFL yet, and this is going to be a potential shock to the system for him. They got DJ Reader, who's going to be able to help stop that run. That Swift isn't going to be a factor in this one, and or on paper is not going to be a factor in this one. So that's going to set up Caleb Williams to have to throw the ball a lot. If we got no Carlton Davis in this one, and DJ Moore is taking less of those deep balls, then we're going to be set up with Odunze to potentially have a decent game in this one. So let's put Odunze in there. Going to leave us with 5,400 in the flex. Allen has a good matchup as well. Detroit has been a team we've been targeting all year in the slot, starting with that week 1 when we targeted Cooper Kupp. But Detroit has just been destroyed in the slot. So if you wanted to pivot off of Odunze and put Allen in there, I don't hate that either. For the sake of our narrative of that game, maybe going a little bit under, I would only start one of these dudes. So let's put Odunze in there for the upside. Let's look at 5,400. So if we're looking at this matchup for Christian Watson, Miami has given up 19.6 DraftKings points a game to the wide receiver, wide out position. So that's going to make Christian Watson interesting. We're also missing. We're also missing Doubs this week, so Christian Watson is going to be set up to have a bigger potential opportunity share. Dontayvion Wicks, I think a lot of people are going to Wicks this week. Let me get an idea of the ownership on these guys. Let's see. So if we're looking over at the Packers, Jayden Reed is coming up at the highest owned guy. Watson's at 23%. Wicks is at 18.7. You can really, take your pick between those guys. I think the sharper field is going on Wicks in this one, but I think Watson has some potential this week. But I don't hate going Wicks or Watson if you're in this situation where you're left with 5,400. Let's check out some of these other guys. We're 100 short of Dowdle, so we could always put Dowdle in there after all. Maybe he gets a like a rushing touchdown or a passing touchdown from Cooper Rush. Let's put the Dolphins in here instead. that's a situation where we can put Dowdle in our lineups. He's actually really cheap. I'm surprised he's that cheap. We could also, if we went down to the Dolphins here, we could also get Reed in here, who I like a lot better than any of the other receivers on the Packers this week. I think I had a nugget on Reed. Let me check it out. So basically, just the target share for Reed shoots up when Dowdle is out, or when Doubs is out. So maybe not such a great matchup, especially if we're going away from that game as part of our narrative here. So I think Dowdle would make a lot of sense. Where's Tracy at? Tracy's at 5,800, so we'd have to go even further down from the Dolphins to get to Tracy. But this just kind of gives you an idea of a direction that we could go if we wanted to get off the chalk here. If we wanted to stick with it, Caleb Williams, you can stack him with two guys. The targets have been going to Odunze under this new offensive coordinator. And I do like Keenan Allen's matchup too in this slot. So if we got those dudes in there, maybe we do the same thing with these running backs. Dowdle is going to be popular due to his cheapness. So let's get him in there, and let's put Gibbs in there. Let's get a defense. We'll go with let's go with the Packers in this one. Then if we're looking at tight end, we can get Laporta to stick with our game stack. And Laporta's got a decent matchup this week. Flex, let's get Achane in there. Leaves us with 6,800 for our final guy. That puts us in a good situation because we can get Williams, we can get Reed. I would not put a third pass catcher in there, but you can get Watson. You get the idea. You can rotate a bunch of these guys out. This is probably what a popular build would look like for this slate. You could swap out Laporta with Jonnu. You left in pretty much the same spot. You can get all these guys. You're just short of Tyreek. So if you wanted to get off the Packers there, maybe go with the Dolphins instead. That's going to leave you with room for Tyreek. You got a little bit of correlation with Dolphins and Achane there. You got Jonnu. You got no run backs on the Green Bay side. So, the Dolphins are controlling it with the short game and the run. And then Tyreek, ends up doing something. But that's four Dolphins, so you can always switch out of Jonnu back to Laporta. And then put Tyreek in there. I think that's a little bit better situation. But you guys get the idea. Just try to be different this week. Don't buy into certainty. There's no certainty on this slate. That's my main point with this show. So I'm gonna go drink a bunch of water so my throat isn't freaking just scratching the hell out of me, and I have to record 3 showdown shows. So good luck, guys. Check out the showdown shows. Make sure to hit the like button. Give me the 30 likes so we can put out shorter videos later on. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. Help me get to 1,300 subscribers. I only need about 90 left to get there. I was trying to get there by the end of Thanksgiving, so I appreciate your help with that one. And I will see you guys later on.